No. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing okay, and thank you so much for creating the time to join us today. I hope my audio is audible and my video is working. So it's almost on time. We'll be giving our panelists a few minutes to join. As that is happening, I'll just be doing a brief introduction in regards to what today's event is, what we aim to achieve, and just brief also introduce the agenda. So to start us off, my name is Lawrence Chilwa. I will be hosting today's webinar once again, a special member with the Kenya CyberSecurity and Forensics Association. In today's session, our main focus will be leading and structuring this discussion in line with election and cybersecurity, trying to see avenues for synergy between these two and how they are tightly coupled or related. Now, today's session will not be about who is the running mate for UDA, what is our Jacoya up to, what is Azimio trying to do, and all that. As always, our aim is to make these webinars very insightful and thought-provoking, especially for cybersecurity practitioners in the industry. Loosely using the word cybersecurity practitioner here, not tied at all to the practitioner's bill. So some of the questions that our panelists will be responding will be, one, does the public have a good understanding of how the technology is going to be applied in the upcoming election, actually next week? Secondly, we'll also be trying to see what's the impact of cybersecurity when it comes to the general outcome of the election. Now, remember that when you're talking of cybersecurity, the foundation is consists of three key points. So availability, integrity, and confidentiality. So we'll also be looking at what's the impact of that as far as the results and the general outcome of the election is concerned. Then we'll also have a look and discuss more on what are the threats affecting the election, especially given that we see this election electronic transmission being electronic transmissions and electronics being involved. Specifically, the KIMS kit. Probably might be too late for us to talk about the BFR kits, but I guess focus will be on the KIMS kit. Also, hopefully, we have heard the VPN being mentioned in regards to transmission. We have heard of strategic election materials, non-strategic election materials. Then also we have the results transmission system, the RTS. So our panelists will be able to shed more light on that. Then lastly, we'll also review the 2017 nullification because of the technology failure, just trying to see what were the issues that were brought up during 2017 and have those issues been improved on what is the current status based on 2017. Then with that, I would like to start introducing our panelists. I will briefly mention them, then I'll let them introduce themselves. So to start us off, we will start with Al-Nori, our legal in-house on retainer member. Then we have John Baraza, then we have Fred. So Fred, if you're in the call, if you could please start us off with an introduction, tell us a bit about yourself, then we'll go to Al-Nori, then Jones, then finally close it off with Malusi.
Yeah, can you see me?
Yes, sir, we loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you, Lawrence, for this session. It's an honor and a privilege. I'm Frederick. I'm the Vice Chair at Kenya CyberSecurity and Forensic Association. I also lead a team at Secunex. We have been in the industry for the last more than 10 years. And basically, we are in cybersecurity. We are also in IT. We have a number of softwares that we have developed, and also mentorship of young people. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Bwana Fred. Bwana Alnori, if you could do us the honors.
Kindly, just 1 minute, maybe Mr. Barasa can be introducing himself as I settle down in 2 minutes, please.
No worries, no worries. Jones?
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Or even see me?
Loud and clear. Both. We can see you and hear you. Just not feel you yet.
Thank you very much, Bwana Lawrence, for having me here for this particular session. It's been a privilege and an honor, and I feel elated that I'm going to share my personal point of view, of our cybersecurity point of view, to the matters of cybersecurity and elections. My name is Jones George Baraza. I'm the founder of Swift Intellect Limited. That's the company behind Cyberspace Kenya. Basically, we come from software engineering and cybersecurity engineering, threat intelligence in terms of cybersecurity also. So I'm also the country ambassador of Blacks in Cybersecurity. This is an organization which is headquartered in the United States, which aims at celebrating individuals who are making Black individuals or African individuals who are making strides in appreciating and enhancing cybersecurity in the world. And regarding my stay here today, I hope my few years of experience in regard to matters of cybersecurity and information security will be of importance or contribute to this particular discussion. I look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jones, and happy to have you here with us. Before we jump to Mr. Alnori, we have Malusi Faith. Faith, if you could do us the honors brief introduction, and we proceed.
Hi, how are you? I don't know if you can see me. Can you see?
We can hear you. We can't see you yet.
Okay, let me work on my video, but before I make that happen, my name is Malusi Faith. You'll see me hopefully in a bit, and I'm an information security engineer at ICRAL. My specialty is in server infrastructure, network security, and penetration testing. Honestly, it's an honor to be in this panel, and I really don't know how I ended up here. And I'm looking forward, above everything, to learn about the cybersecurity space, particularly in the elections that are coming up. And hopefully whatever I've learned in the couple of minutes that I had to research will be impactful to some of you. And I'm looking forward, as much as everyone else is, to learning more about the electoral process and how cybersecurity plays a role in it. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. I think I've seen Nancy. I think, yeah, both of us are in SheHacks, and we work in the technical department of SheHacks. And yeah, thank you for having me, and let me work on my video situation. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Faith. Very happy to have you here. I guess that the association is seeing a lot of potential in a lot of our upcoming talent, and ensuring that, true to its mandate and objectives, the association is nurturing such talent. So, Alnori, I hope you are ready and settled in.
Thank you very much, Bwana Lawrence, and each one of us who is in the forum tonight. As I also try to organize to see whether I can have my video on. I don't promise though, but I'm very happy. My name is Alinori Kwena. Alinori wears 3 capes. I am specialized in law, intelligence management, and scientific investigation, or other investigations. I am very privileged and very happy always to learn and share with great minds as my colleague Frederick and Barasa. And I look forward to having such an grating session towards this very important conversation that I think is also very timely. I'll be looking much into the legal perspective in relation to how technology affects elections, not particularly in Kenya, but also across the globe. So thank you very much. And let me organize and see whether I can also have my video and be seen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alnori, and our panelists for the introduction and also just availing yourself for today. So to start us off, this question will be directed at Mr. Frederick Wahome, and anyone else will be more than free to chip in. Now, Alnori mentioned of something commendable happening today. So today is the 3rd of August. The last batch of election materials actually meant to be delivered today. Will they be delivered today? Not really sure, but I know the IBC had committed to today being the last date. So, Bwana Fred, before we just dive into this, let's do a bit of background in regards to technology and election. Now, from the little research I've done, 2002, that election is and I might be wrong, highly doubt, but the 2022, the 2002 election is considered as one of the best election that this country had seen. And I think that is also one of the election that basically set ground for technology to be incorporated in election. So Fred, based on your experience, just a brief overview on election and that maturity we are seeing from being purely paper-based to introducing aspects of technology in that whole process.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And also thank you guys for joining for this session. My number of years of experience within technology and cybersecurity, and also having interacted with IBC back in 2017, as an association, they approved us to observe the technical processes that was during the repeat presidential process. But our scope mainly was within Nairobi, the polling stations, and also the transmission network and at the National Talent Center. So we were able to get a number we were able to acquire somehow skills on what happens and what entails when it comes to the election. And when you look at just like any other technology process, and the further we've come in terms of network, bandwidth capacity, the issues of digital transformation. We came from 2G, now we are 3G, 4G, now we are heading to 5G. There has been some continuous growth process when you focus to the elections. And when you look at the years that has been there, the number of elections that we have had back from 1997, I think. Then we came to 2002. Then we came to 2007. Then we came to, I think, 2012. We can be able to see a number of growth because most of our elections actually, they were manual in nature, meaning that you just go and you tick your vote. Then the results are carried all along to the National Talent Center without having any process of technology involved in the whole processes or in the whole ecosystem. But courtesy of the amendment of the laws, the Section 39 of the Elections Act, courtesy of 207. We saw issues to do with malpractices in the whole electoral process. And one of the recommendations from the judges and from the team that was given the task to review how the election was performed in terms of integrity, one of the recommendations was to incorporate technology into the processes. So we have not been able to completely computerize everything, but currently we have a number of things which are relying on technology. I'm not going into so much details so that I can also give other panelists sometimes to also dissect on the same. And if you look at 2012, somehow there were issues to do with technology part of it. When you come to 2017, we also got ourselves into serious issues. And one of the reasons might be is that we jumped into the technology, thinking that it's going to sort out some of the elements which needed human being intervention. We thought that if we incorporated technology in alignment with the law, the requirement of the law, then we would be able to sort out the issues of we never anticipated issues of cyber threat. We never even thought that it's possible for an election to be nullified just because there were some challenges. Just because a server is not available on the network, that can lead to the election being nullified. How? Because there are timelines that are tied to the election. And for instance, if you look at the presidential results, I think in 7 days, you should have the final results. And within some times, we should expect display of some results on a public portal. And if, for instance, a server is not available, not necessarily that it has been hacked, even a network can go down, then you expect so much disinformation and misinformation, which definitely is going to affect the integrity of the election. And as we start this session, we need to understand that election is about the public confidence. And if you're able to sustain the confidence, whether through the manual system or through the electronic system, then we will have results that almost every person is going to agree with. But if any of the elements within the technology platform is going to be affected, it's going to have direct impact, as we can be able to borrow from 2017. So to cap it all, we can say that it has been a journey, learning processes, and I can see that into the near future, we'll even have national standards that will govern cybersecurity along the elections.
Thank you so much, Alfreda. So just to pick up on top of that, and I know you have done a lot of work, research into this particular space. So in regards to technology that has been introduced in this whole election process, our members listening to this and also other non-members who are listening and part of this, what are those key technologies that we should be aware of? What is the role that they're actually playing, and what are some of the misconceptions that most of us might be having? So just to preempt you a bit, when you talk of misconceptions, I know the IBC released a statement in response to some of the concerns that the various parties had raised, and one of that was a confusion between the BEVAR kits and the KIMS kit. So can you just mention some of the technologies we should be aware of, what their role is, and misconceptions people might have, and also try to clear those misconceptions?
Okay, still borrowing from the knowledge that we have acquired, having interacted with the IBC, and also this time around, we have tried also to engage them to some of questions. They have responded, others they have ignored. We have also tried to speak to the Smartmatic. This is a company that is responsible to manage the technology aspect of the elections. And we can say that you can structure the technology in regard to the elections into a number of compartments. You can have a look at the polling station. You can have a look at the transmission, that is the network transmission. You can have the technology at the National Tallying Center, where these servers are hosted at the National Tallying Center. And we have a number of technologies. First, we have the BVR kits. So these are the technology that captured our details, our biometric details. They were registered. And we expect that as a voter, when you walk into a polling station, courtesy of the registration that took place, we expect that there will be ways of authenticating and trying to prove that you are the one who says that you are. So another one is the KIMS kits. These, of course, they'll be within the polling stations. And this time around, they are different from 2017. They will not be using mobile phones for transmission of the results in form of text. So they'll just be using the the KIMS kits. So the KIMS kits have already been loaded with the software, a component of the election management system. And the same kits will be the one responsible to capture the Form 34A. Then after that, it will now be transmitted into the network. And within the network, we have the Safaricom. And much of this information is publicly accessible. So we might not be guessing. And we have also verified this information from the IBC. And on the network, we have Safaricom as the primary network provider. Of course, they have other redundant network, courtesy of the 2017 requirement by the law, by the judges, that they needed to have a redundant network. So we also have now servers on the back end, and these are the servers responsible for processing, running of the whole election management system. And I think those are the main key technology devices and platforms that we have for transmission and management of the voters' information.
Thank you so much, Alfred, for that elaborate breakdown of the technologies involved. So my next question going to Jones here is that, so coming back to the KIMS, and I think the IBC has been very good, and they have tried to share as much details as possible in regards to their preparation, the kind of audits that they have done and all that. So Fred just mentioned that unlike before, where the results were being transmitted using a phone, right now, everything is going to be done on using the KIMS kit. Now, IBC mentioned that for this particular election, they'll actually be using what they are calling the Results Transmission System, RTS. Now, this RTS is basically integrated on the KIMS kit, and it's what is being used to send those results. Now, one interesting thing that has been picked and raised is that this KIMS kit, one, they have a SIM card, they have SD cards. Now, question Jones here is, from a development point of view, from all that transmission point of view, from a data storage point of view, what are some of those best practices that we are hoping are done, and what can you share in regards to, I say in regards to the controls that ideally should be existing to guarantee election integrity as far as the KIMS kit is concerned?
Thank you very much, Lawrence, for that tricky question. I'm saying tricky because I may not have a sufficient answer, because depending on the type of technology that is being employed, we may have different kind of security controls in place. Nevertheless, let me start by referring to what you've began by saying that we in cybersecurity per se we have the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the information. So Fred mentioned that there was introduction of the BVR kits, which essentially they are tasked with voter registration and also verification of voter data. And also I remember there's a statement that was made by the IT team from the IBC, which mentioned that the BVR kits, the polling stations, will not essentially be requiring data or an internet connection for the verification of voters. And in this case, they mentioned that something very interesting. They mentioned that the voter information has already been entered into the BVR kits. And I found that a little, well, it's interesting because when you talk about the confidentiality of the data and the security controls that we tend to put in place, the first question will be, who was who or what department was authorized or authorized the supervised the process, the whole process in which the data was being entered into this particular BVR kits? Because we've had a scenario whereby at the polling station, the BVR kits failed. And either they failed because they were not fired on, and there was a particular case whereby they failed because someone may forgot the PIN to one of the SIM cards that was being used. And in such a scenario, we come, which tends to bring up the whole picture of technology in itself, because I was speaking at a different convention, and I mentioned that technology itself is not sufficient, because we may talk about technology, may say how good technology is, but at the end of it all, if the people and the processes involved are not going to be at par, then again, it's going to be a failing point. And having said that, elections in most cases are rigged through to processes, especially when you have access to the physical kit. We may be able to gain access to the kit, then have the information changed in one way or the other, or even tamper. Because when you talk about the CIA trade, and I'm going to talk about availability in this particular case, in availability, that means that that information that, let's say I've gone to a polling station and I want to get the paper so that I can select whoever I want to vote for. But then again, my name does not appear in that particular kit. So do we have a failover? Do you have a backup for the same? And on that same note, I remember a few days ago, there's actually also a court in, a case in court. I think Banalino will be able to shed more light on that, whereby the different parties are asking whether we could have a backup, a manual register during at the particular polling station, so that we'll be able to, in the event that the BVR kits fail, then they'll be able to switch back. Sorry, they'll be able to switch back to the manual system. So some of the security controls that I see, I may not necessarily, just as I said, it was a really tricky question, because one, ABC has been very, very, not very much in terms of open with information, because once you seek a particular clarification on a certain item, they may not essentially respond. Just as also Fred has mentioned here, when KCSFA reached out to them with specific questions, they were able to respond to specific areas that they felt they could respond and ignored the rest. So, but from a soft engineering point of view, one thing that I normally see is that every software has, or every application has, the application layer control, whereby I know as Jones Baraza, let's say I'm the one who's operating at the polling station, I have only read access to the particular information in that particular KIMS kit. So my role there is only to see whether when Lawrence is a registered voter in this particular polling station. And also, I may not have enough permission to alter any information. Let's say someone comes to the polling station and tells me that, Bwana Jones, I know my name is Jones, my name is Lawrence, and I would like to cast my vote. But when I look at the system, there's a typo in the system. Let's say does not say Lawrence, is some has a misspelling. So someone asks, am I able to change this particular information? Then as a person who is attending, will I have the required permission to alter those changes? So one security control that I normally emphasize on when you're building different types of software is, let's have degrees of access. Let's say I'm a security, it's, forgive me for having my mind a bit mixed up here, but you have the security controls whereby you have different levels of access, and the admin is able to access a particular have particular access and privileges on that particular system. So I may not essentially discuss the BVR kit in that case, because I don't know how the security system in that regard or the security controls have been put in place. But one thing I know is that first, during the registration of voters and also the auditing of the voter register, we have an independent body that is called upon to come and audit the voter register. So the voter registration, the auditing of the voter register is also an important aspect when it comes to trying to find the duplications, or because we realize that some people may be able to register today as a voter, but by some luck or some bad luck, I may not be able to vote. Maybe I passed on or something happens. So the work of an audit in this case is to try and see whether the voter registrar, the voter registration data is accurate, and also it's at par, because the people who voted in 2007 may not be essentially the people who are voting in 2020. So an audit is also very important security aspect, or rather a check that must be employed in this particular setup. I may not have much to add in that regard, so I may have I request whether any of my panelists also have something to add on to that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to add something, just to add on what you mentioned. Oh, let me put my video on. Or just make a clarity. So the BVR kits are used when you're registering as a voter from the beginning. So this is where you provide your fingerprints, your voter ID card, not your voter ID card, your ID card. They collect your fingerprints, your facial, whatever. So when you go to vote during the fateful day, when you go to vote, you put your fingerprints on a kit they call the electronic voter identification system, which then retrieves data that was collected during the registration and matches. So the person who's there is able to match whether that information is who you are or who you presented yourself to be. So if for any reason your fingerprints is not visible, is not clear, or the tool is not able to match your face for some reason, then they're able to fall back on something like your ID number. Or they also have, I saw this from the IEBC post-electoral analysis reports. They're able to fall back on a physical register that they give to every polling station. So there's a backup for in case the electronic voter identification system fails. So I believe there already is a backup in place. I did not see that when I was voting, but I hope it works this time around. Yeah, so I was just making that clarity between the BVR and the EVID system. I saw that on the report that the IEBC produced just after the general elections and the fresh elections of 2017. Another thing also, I think Jones mentioned something regarding the audits, and the audit is very, very important, especially with regard to things like invalid data, missing data, things like IDs and passports, dead registered voters. So I think KPMG has been responsible for conducting all those voter data since 2013, and it just concluded its audit a couple of months ago, and IBC was able to produce a report of the same. I think it was produced around June. So you're able to see what sort of data was audited and what sort of data IBC has been able to remove or edit around that sort of pool. Yeah, so that was what I was trying to say.
Thank you so much, Malusi and Jones, for that. Fred, I see your mic is on. You want to chip in?
Thank you. I also wanted to add some information regarding the KIMS kits. because what happens is that they have an SD card, and in this SD card, for each polling station, the database of the voters is loaded into the SD card, and they now insert into the KIMS kit. And one of the advice that we have been giving to a number of agents is to ensure that they are there within the polling stations to ensure that they can be able to maybe verify the contents of the SD card. And there are a number of security measures they have put in place. So first, they have about 6 KIMS kits. So if one of the kit fails, so you expect that they can be able to use the rest. They have at least 6 of them in each polling stations. And also the SD card, it is unusable outside of the polling station. So if the polling station is ABC, you cannot pick that SD card and go insert it in a computer and try to maybe run through. And the person who is responsible to for the authentication of the SD card in the KIMS kit is the returning officer and the presiding officer. And there's also a level of authentication and authorization. So there's the aspect of the biometric into the KIMS kit. So anyone cannot log into the kit. And of course, there's the login facility within the kit. So anyone who logs in, we can be able to retrieve this information right along in case there is a disk. So at the polling station, I think the elements that my brother shared about the CIA have already been catered for. The confidentiality, the data is there. And actually, we asked IBC if they have complied to Data Protection Act, and they said yes. So we may not expect impersonation and such things. The availability, the KIMS are there. We have at least, they have 6 kits there at the polling station. And also the data integrity, the agents and the observers can be able to verify the authenticity of the voter data that is within the SD card. So the data is not loaded primarily into the KIMS kit, but it's contained within an SD card. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred, for that addition. So as we move forward and just try to wrap up the technical aspect of this, taking back this discussion to Jones. So one of the things that IBC mentioned was that they rolled out VPN. Transmission is going to happen via VPN. Now, from a cybersecurity world, we know some professionals within the domain don't consider VPN as an adequate security measure. I'm just wondering, Jones, if you can just shed more light on one, why they need to use VPN, and what can be achieved with a VPN connection, and what can't be achieved with a VPN connection.
Thank you very much once again, Lawrence. You'll have to forgive my voice. I'm having a flu. So if you see me running out of my voice running out of words, just bear with me. Let me start by saying that I read an article which mentioned that IBC, the transmission of the data from the polling station to the servers will be encrypted. And to me, I say that is a very positive point. But encryption, okay, the information did not specify the type of encryption, so we may not delve much into that. But talking about VPN, well, a VPN creates a network. It's like a segregation that sets you aside from the public network. And by a public network, let me give an example. When I open a public page, for example, I go to Google, Google will be able to see what device or what IP address I'm actually being able to access that particular web page. And the IP is acts like an ID, whereby if I make a request from my particular IP address, then Google will know that this particular IP address made a certain request in regards to, and this is the information that I want to feed back. So that is basically, the moment you access the internet, you have a certain IDs assigned to your system, which indeed they act as, which in our case is the IP. But for the VPN creates a private network. This is a private network whereby it's separated from the rest of the world, and also it offers some kind of encryption, whereby in as much as, let's say, your internet service provider may be able to see that you're surfing the internet, they may not be able to know exactly what you're trying to access, what website am I trying to access, and also they may not also have a history of the kind of activity you've had online. And that's why you see many government bodies, now that we're working at home, there's emphasis on having a VPN whereby all communication within the organization is done internally. And this is like, let's say we have a church, and inside the church we have different rooms. So let's say the deacon has his particular office. We have the pastor who has the particular office. So when the pastor goes out there on the pulpit and speaks, he speaks to everyone. But now there's a way in which you can make can have the deacon speak to the pastor or any other member of that particular, any other grouping within that particular church privately, without the rest of the members in the church being able to get whatever is being communicated. And basically what a VPN does is just kind of creates a virtual connection, whereby a virtual private connection, whereby not many people may be able to listen to whatever is happening in. And you started by mentioning that in the cybersecurity world, there's a lot of skeptics in regard to the use of VPNs. And that is because in as much as we tend to believe that VPNs offer some kind of foolproof against sniffing. And sniffing, this is basically when someone tries to listen in to whatever communication that you're having within that particular network. And in most cases, we have an attack called a man-in-the-middle attack, whereby a person places himself between you and the person or the server in which you're trying to communicate. And they're able to listen in and also get the kind of information that you're passing in. So research has shown that VPNs may not be entirely secure because you're able to break into the such VPNs. Some VPNs also collect data, because you may think that you're very safe, but the developers of that particular network also have access to that particular data. And depending on how strong the encryption mechanism is within that particular network, you may be able to either sniff into the communication or may not be able to sniff into the communication within that particular network. So having said that, I think we mentioned the issue of the RTS. And also, just as I started by mentioning, the ABC reiterated the fact that they're going to employ a VPN for the communication between, that's a private connection between the KIMS kits, which will be delivering the data, and the server. Let's hope that that is indeed the case. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jones, for that and breaking down the VPN, how it works, and also how it's going to be utilized in this. So moving on to one other point, and I think in this case, I'll involve both Jones and Malusi. So one of the things here was what's the impact of cybersecurity in regards to the results and the general outcome? Now, when you talk of cybersecurity, one of the things that I know has been prevalent in regards to this election has been the issue of deepfakes. I know recently, even the Communication Authority in one of their stakeholder forums shared with members a deepfake video of one party basically saying, misinforming or disinforming guys about the other party. Then I know recently, as of this week, actually, there was also what most guys are considering a deepfake video of one party basically communicating or rallying the crowd with false information. So maybe if I was to go to Malusi, what can you share about a deep fake and the role they might play in this election during the whole electioneering period, the campaign period, to the time when the results will be announced and post results?
Yeah, I did see that video doing rounds on social media, especially on Twitter. I think it was this week, just as you mentioned. But what I believe is, I don't think that was a deep fake, but there is potential for deep fakes being manipulated or being used during this electioneering period. So I believe what happened was they manipulated that video to say something that it did not say initially. Regardless of that, I think there's a very high potential, and there has been very high usage of and spread of misinformation and false propaganda throughout this period. So you see that especially, I'm on Twitter a lot, so I see that quite a lot on Twitter, especially from people who, okay, let's not go there. But there is a very high potential for, and there has been misinformation and spread of false propaganda, and people have been paid. I think there was reports that were done a while back about this. Influencers and people have been paid to spread malicious information and false propaganda about particular candidates throughout the period. And this is very wrong because it creates a very false narrative, and it creates a perception of Kenyans who, will take money to do anything. And in the end, I think we all know what happens when we spread misinformation. So this in 2007, and some people were prosecuted for it. So this period creates a very precarious state of the national zeitgeist, and we are all very precarious about what we say. But people will take money to say whatever, because we're all struggling, and I'm not saying I understand what they're doing, but this is a very precarious period, and we've seen deepfakes and spread of misinformation happening during this period. On top of that, I think we've also seen for people in blue teams and for people in defense spaces, you've seen this period being manipulated by malicious actors. So you see, it's a very what is the word I'm looking for? It provides a very good environment for things like phishing scams. So you see someone sending a phishing email that tells you, or do you want information about candidates ABC, or do you want to find out what's happening in Kenya regarding, the popularity of your chosen candidates and so on and so forth. And they tell you to click on a link, or you download an attachment. So this period in of itself is very precarious just to our national and social being as a country, as well as it's a very good space for malicious actors to use whatever is going on to propagate whatever they do want to propagate. So yeah, so this is something we've seen and something that's ongoing. So it's all up to us to, inform our friends or inform our family about what is going on, especially for people who are not in the cybersecurity space. For us, we might be able to tell that this is not good, but for someone who is not, they're able to be easily manipulated. Yeah.
Malusi, thank you for that. Before I release you, so what is a deepfake? So I know probably a percentage of us might have an understanding of what a deepfake is, but for maybe probably the few of us or the many of us who don't know what a deepfake is, can you just, in a very layman language, just share on what is a deepfake?
So a deepfake, I believe a deepfake is an AI generated video using someone's appearance. So for example, I could use your appearance to say something you did not say. So I can use your appearance and manipulating AI to make it appear as if you said something. And we saw this, I think we first saw this in the US elections. I think it was used a couple of times. But essentially what it is using a scenario, I would say Jones, for example, had used Jones' likeness and make him say something like, oh no, all laws should die, something like that. Yeah, but he didn't actually say that. So just manipulated your AI and his likeness to say something like that. And then using that video, propagate it to the world so that it seems as if Jones said that sort of thing. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, at least to me it does. So still building on top of that, Now, in cybersecurity, actually, when I started with this second point, I thought this was going to be a very technical discussion. I think that's where I went wrong. So one of the main things we do in cybersecurity is actually user awareness, helping user and informing them in regards to how do you detect this. A lot of the time, this has been towards social engineering and such. Now, from a deepfake point of view, from a fake news point of view, from a disinformation point of view, what should users be aware of? What can I tell my mom to be aware of, so that if she receives a video on WhatsApp of candidate XYZ saying that during election period boycott, how does she know that this is a deep fake? Let me not even forward it.
I'm not gonna lie, I really don't know. I think there's a time I've seen a couple of deepfakes and I wasn't able to tell, so I can't tell you exactly what to do. And perhaps the only reason why we figured out that the video that was doing rounds on social media was manipulated is that because other people produced the original version, and the way that it began propagating across social media is that it came from the opposing party or the opposing team. So there was a bit of a question over there. So, but for someone who hasn't seen the original video, or someone who is incapable of telling that this might be manipulation of the populace, they might be manipulated into believing that's the truth. So when it comes to deepfakes or manipulated videos, I believe the only way through is if the original thing is produced. To be honest, I really like other panelists or anyone else in the crowd to be able to help me. I wouldn't know how to tell a deepfake if it just appeared, even though you can see there's I don't know that you've seen deepfakes before, but the video looks, or the person who is in the video looks a bit distorted, so they look a bit robotic, and that's usually how I can tell, but that's not the foolproof way, I believe, because the AI has so much potential. So if anyone else, if any other panelists can be able to tell me or tell anyone else in the crowd who is able to like truly and fully know how a way of telling apart a fake and in a true video, that would be good on it, because I'd need it to tell my parents.
So Jones, before I hand this over to maybe to shed some light there, I think just for Malusi, it's not a good deep fake if you can easily identify it.
Yes.
So if you can easily identify, then it's not a very good deep fake. And I think this also just speaks to the technical complexity involved when deep fakes are being generated and created. Now, just to add context as I hand this over to Jones, I'm tempted to say one of the most commendable series you have watched, which actually ties into election, has been the British series Undeclared War between Russia and Britain. And we have actually seen aspect of deep fakes there. We have actually seen all Cambridge Analytica kind of campaigns being used to sway an election. Jones, from that perspective, what additional things should users be aware of? And just building on what Melissa has said and illustrated, what additional safeguards can users put in, especially the elderly, and also as professionals who spend a lot of time on Twitter, on Instagram, sharing these videos, liking, forwarding, and retweeting?
Thank you once again, Lawrence. Let me start by mentioning that an election is a very emotive process. And by being emotive, it means that people throw logic behind and now start reasoning with emotions. And the moment I see a video, whether it's manipulated or not, funny enough is that some of us know that this video has been manipulated. But because we are already, our emotions have been touched, we still have to forward that particular video. We still have to push it further because we have an agenda. And just to add on to what Malusi has said, trust me, it's very difficult to identify some of these videos. And a deepfake does not essentially relate to a video. Also, we have voice manipulation, whereby a voice like myself, for example, you can manipulate my voice in a way that someone else will say that, hey, that's Jones who said those particular words. And just to move slightly away from the electoral process and give a more real life example of how deepfakes are so bad is that one organization, an international organization, happened to receive a deepfake. Let's say it is not theoretical. This is actually something that happened. So the treasurer or the accountant of one of the organization received a message via WhatsApp. This message was instructing that particular accountant to release funds to a particular organization, a particular sum of money to a particular organization. And when this accountant listened to this voice, indeed, this was the voice of the director of the company. And she went ahead and did what? And did release the funds to that particular organization. Only later on to realize that the director never sent such message, and also the voice had been manipulated in a way that it sounded as if it came from that particular director. So the extent in which deepfakes are being used it's at an astronomical level, because you may not be able to identify this. And also relating it back to cybersecurity, we've had professionals who've been, Malusi mentioned about phishing. We've had professional cybersecurity pros that have been there for years, but they were able to fall to a social engineering scam. So we may not have a one-fit-all solution when it comes to identifying deepfakes. What I may suggest rather is, one politician says, let's not put politics in our heart. Because once you put it in our heart, then it tends to reason with emotions rather than with our minds. So the first thing you do is, once you receive a particular video, don't be too fast to forward it. First, verify. I know you may not have some means in which you may be able to verify. Something fun is that also the video that we've been discussing, some of the politicians were able to share that particular video on their Twitter accounts. Meaning that they too fell for the trick. Either they fell for the trick, or because it served as a particular agenda, they're able to forward that particular video. So at the end of it all, once you receive a particular message, a particular voice message, is it a video, is it text message, don't be too quick to forward it out, because you may not know exactly how much in terms of damage you may do. And this has been necessitated by the growth in the social networks. A good example is Twitter. And I normally tell individuals that you should never make a political poll on Twitter. Because one, Twitter has real people and Twitter has non-real people. By non-real people, I mean robots. So the robots are just there listening to particular keywords. Say one particular poll that I've seen that has been coming up and about in the recent times is, who are you going to vote for? Is it Raila or Ruto? So there are certain bots that have been programmed specifically to listen to such votes and to vote. And in such cases, they give a misleading information. Some particular individual may appear as if on Twitter, yes, you're leading, but in real life, then something is not really right. And also that contributes to voter apathy, because let's say, for example, you conduct a Twitter poll, then let me just use this example. We have two major politicians currently, Raila Odinga and William Ruto. So once you ask the populace, who are you going to vote for? Then a majority say, we're going to vote for Ruto. So as a Ruto supporter, I can see that, okay, so Ruto supporters are 60%, Raila Odinga 40%. So that means that even if I don't vote, Ruto is going to win. And as such, you may imagine how many people think about that, because they imagine, should I just wake up early in the morning to go and cast my vote? And yet I know, according to the Twitter poll, Ruto has won. And as such, that creates that kind of voter apathy, whereby they not be able to come out in large numbers to support their candidate. And I think that's one thing that also politicians have identified. They've used Infotrack, for example. They've used other polling agencies. We have also seen media houses coming up with their own internal votes. So this kind of votes, in as much as they may want to paint try to give us a picture of how the political landscape is in Kenya, or how it has proceeded over time, I think it is really misleading. But generally, once again, just as Malusi said, it may not be easy to identify a some of these deep fakes, but the general rule is that when you receive such kind of content, please do not distribute them. Just leave them with you. But at some point, the truth will come out. I think that's it from my contribution. I don't know whether Fred has any contribution in that or on that particular topic.
Just before Fred jumps in, I actually want him to jump in and respond to some of the questions that have been raised here, and just also to help us now go into root cause analysis, especially just looking back at what happened in 2017 and the court ruling. So both Malusi and Jones have brought up something very interesting, the deep fake and specifically the voice. So what stops someone from announcing results? We know, for example, presidential results, I believe, should be announced within a defined period of days. Believe same to all election. What if someone enterprising there with malicious intent records what the presiding officer should be saying and start transmitting these in various WhatsApp calls? So you wake up, should be 2 weeks from now on a Monday, then you hear a voice that really is same to a prominent person saying that Lawrence is the senator for XYZ, or maybe the president for XYZ. I think those are some of the threats that guys should be aware. And I know Fred and the KCSFA leadership is very keen on user awareness, and I'm hoping that this will also be one of those avenues we are sharing out there, that it's just not your typical text, it's also this deep fake in regards to video and in regards to voice. So as I shift these to Fred, so just as we wrap up some of those threats that might affect the election, Fred, I don't know if there's any threat you have, you might have in mind you want to share and enlighten us on. And as you do that, you can also just do a brief in regards to the nullification of 2017, the issues that were identified, comment on them, then Alinori should be able to easily jump in and just enlighten us in regards to that judicial ruling. Fred, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you, other panelists, for also sharing the knowledge. And just touching on the part of the VPN, the current KIMS kits, one of the advantage is the VPN somehow, it ensures that these kits cannot be accessible from the internet, although technically somehow it might be possible, but somehow they are isolated. So the database somehow is not interconnected at the polling station with other polling stations. And I saw Safaricom today, they shared an update that they are applying something they are calling network freeze, meaning that in the duration of the transmission of the results, they will be able to halt any form of network maintenance and such things, so that they will not try to affect the network availability. Remember, if the network goes down, even though there are no malwares that access the network, but by the network being down, you will hear all manners of disinformation that the votes are being cooked and all that. And just maybe to touch briefly on your questions, there are a number of threats, and as my brother had shared, we have the elements of cybersecurity, we have the confidentiality. So at the polling station, it's possible to impact on the confidentiality if the SD card gets into the wrong hand. And this time, of course, we are encouraging the agents and also the observers to make sure that they can be able to verify the authenticity of the SD card. That is number one. At the network level, the confidentiality is already sorted out by the virtue of encryption of that transmission. Remember, what is being transmitted is Form 34A as an image. So is it possible to manipulate the contents of the image? It's not possible the moment it has been put on the network. But before the image is captured, and we saw this during the dry run, and a number of questions were raised, but IBC was non-committal. So the Form 34A, it has a number of security features. One of it is the QR code. It also have a digital signature for authenticity into the National Talent Center. So it is possible for someone to have a genuine Form 34A, but they put fake information in form of results. So someone can put fake results in the Form 34A, even though the Form 34 is genuine and verifiable, the KIM kit cannot be able to detect the authenticity of the data that has been put on that Form 34A. So IBC was non-committal. They said they never committed any solutions towards that. So that is already a threat. And how can it affect the outcome? Because the provisional results, somehow they must be able to match with the physical results, which are being shipped physically to the National Talent Center. So you can imagine if the data being transmitted on the network results into 20 million votes or 5 million votes for a certain candidate, but the physical, we have 14 million, then that is going to introduce a challenge like what we had in 2017, because the main challenge that was in 2017 was about the process. And this time around, now that IBC are using Smartmatic, and Smartmatic actually, through the data that we have been able to gather, we tried also to reach out to them, but they never responded. But this company is already approved by the US Homeland Security. They are also coming up with an election around cybersecurity for elections. They are coming up with a standard so that as a country, we don't have any standard that we can also measure up to when we are conducting our elections and transmitting results electronically. So we can say somehow we can give them a benefit of doubt in terms of their capacity to be able to handle the technical processes, which even though the results might be genuine, but someone can come out and say, how is it that the network was not available between this time and this time? Number one, when they were doing the dry run, Garissa, the fiber optic went down, and IBC was unable to explain what are they going to do if fiber optic goes down. There can be a fiber issue, not necessarily a hacking issue. And if you look at the issue of integrity of the data, currently they have complied to the law, but compliance does not result into them actually implementing controls and measures. Number three, we have the issue of access control. So who have access to the kits? The presiding officer must be able to be authorized and also be authenticated into the KIM kit, meaning that their digital details are going to be captured. Also, their biometric and thumbprints, they are going to be required for authenticating into the KIM kit. So we can say that the data that is going to be transmitted, as long as we have someone already authenticated, authorized, then we can rely on the integrity of that data. And again, at the network, we assume and we pray that whoever are manning the network, because the network are being manned by people, these are people of integrity, because anyone can do anything on the network, even though it's a VPN, but someone can just do anything. Then on the back end at the National Talent Center, so we have people who have access to these servers, who are authorized to do what? Because results will also be pulled from the servers and maybe being streamed into a public portal. Is whatever, can we verify that whatever is being streamed into the public portal is what has been received by at the back end at the National Talent Center? At last time, 2017, we were able to verify that the data that which was being transmitted from the polling station was what was being streamed from the servers into the public portal. The only challenge came across the processes. And as per the law, the technology that is being used to transmit the results, first, it must execute that aspect of public confidence. The process must also be free of manipulation. So if you can be able to prove that the network was not manipulated in any way, and how can we do that? There's the aspect of auditability. And auditability must be end to end, meaning that at the polling station, the kits must be able to log any activity that is happening even before the voting starts. Then at the network level, the VPN, the network must be able to record the logs so that in event of anything, we can be able to be given these logs just as 2017. And we were invited also during the execution of the order for the logs by the Chief Justice. So you were able to verify that the logs actually were there. And then the servers at the National Talent Center, can the people manning the servers there be able to verify that the servers are also storing logs? And the last one is on the physical security part of it, because we can talk on the cyber part of it, but we forget, like the kit, someone can steal a kit, and it is going to introduce some doubt into the whole process, which is going to affect the whole process. And also we have the aspect of chain of custody. So can we be able to verify who had the kit at what point in time? For instance, what happened, the first time the kit came, their verification, is the presiding officer who is supposed to have the kit, is he the one? So if you look at the cyber threat as I finish, if we are able to maintain and sustain the elements of cyber security, confidentiality is already sorted out at the polling station, at the network, at the back end, availability, integrity. But if any of those elements, including the auditability, so if the logs are deleted, then that is a problem. And the politicians will know that logs have been deleted. Also, if we cannot be able to trace the kits, how they moved, that is the aspect of chain of custody. It will introduce doubt. And the votes may not be manipulated, but what will happen is for them to induce some form of doubt into the process. And again, they know that the 2017 court, they already set up a precedent such that you can go to the court as an aspirant and say, courtesy of 2017 judgment, they said they nullified the election on the basis of processes. And here we are. We cannot verify if they used the right SD cards. And maybe just to touch on the part of the deepfakes, this is where the AI is being used. And there's this app in Natumika Sana, Navijana. I'm forgetting the name, where you are able to do some song, then you pretend that you are, those are just application of the deepfakes. But now we may not have control on what people are going to do. But as an association, we are launching, I think by Saturday or Sunday, we'll be launching a portal where if there is such a serious manipulated video or audio, people can be able to forward, and it is possible to apply forensics to these things. Like today, one of the politicians, they shared an audio of DP, and DP engaged some IT people to do some form of analysis. And when these politicians noticed that there's already a forensic going on, they went ahead and deleted. And because of that, this DP has already gone to the court. And I feel that is a good thing, that the politicians, they need to go to the court, to be taken to the court, because they are the one encouraging people. They are the one who shares. They have huge following on the social media. And when they share something which has been manipulated, then us as the voters, we just forward and forward and forward. But of course, we are doing awareness as an association. We are telling people, you expect disinformation and misinformation. And somehow, between now and the election, you are going to see a lot of crazy stuff. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred, for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. If we need to open the server, We know what you should be looking for. We know the questions that you should be asking for all the relevant stakeholders. Now, as we wrap this up, Alinori, apologies for really putting you on hold for so long, but 2017, the nullification, based on that court ruling, can you, for some of us who might not have really followed that, what can you share in regards to the reason that actually led to nullification? I know Fred has briefly mentioned to that, what the court recommended and where we are at the moment.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. As usual, when technical experts are talking, non-technical experts, we normally take a backseat. So I'm not offended with that. I'll try to start by putting on my comments in regards to a few issues that have been raised by the previous presenters. To start with, the logs that Mr. Fred is talking about in respect to 2017 were not admissible on the grounds that they were pre-downloaded. So I think maybe that should go on record that IBC was not able to comply with that specific clause in producing the logs for further audit and or analysis. In respect to physical security of the KIMS kits, that's why we have the police who provide security, physical security for the election officials and the IBC essential and non-essential material. So also in referring to the 2017 petition, there was that issue of the provision for GPRS data for the KIMS, which I think was settled that way that as long as we have the police and they are in charge from when the kit is collected and until when it's returned, then that should be ground enough to say the KIMS and any other thing is safe. Now, we do not have what we call provisional results, as I've had Mr. Fred talk about. We have now all the results that will be announced at the polling station are final. They are only declared accordingly if it's for the constituency, for example, for the member of parliament, if it's for the presidential national tallying center, but they are as final as declared by the presiding officer. Now, talking about how to verify what you're calling the deepfakes. If today you had or you see a video or an audio or some documents circulating anywhere online, the first or the best way to verify whether it is original is to verify with the original source. For example, original source, I mean, you can cross-check with IEBC's verified Twitter account, whether they have posted the same documents. We saw recently somebody posting an image of, was it an image or something circulating from former Chief Justice, and he went on his verified Twitter account and responded to it accordingly. So it's always you can always verify from the source. Go to Alinori's page and see whether what is he saying in regards to that. And then officially or legally, any communication coming from any entity or any person standing in the capacity of a government institution or so must also be aired or shared by Kenya KBC. So if today anyone in whatever capacity, even the president, goes on Citizen TV and makes an announcement that today there is a state of emergency, by law that you should not binding. It's only binding when it is done on Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. So that should be a guidance. Now, in terms of backup, backup and the KIMS kit, those two are not just an idea, but it's law. The KIMS kit and the backup, I think backup is introduced under Section 801 of the Elections Act, same as the KIMS kit. So when we are addressing ourselves to this, we need to realize that it's a legislation, not an opinion as per se. Now, let me now go to today's conversation, and this is how I wish to start my submission. Kenya is a sovereign republic, and all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya under Article 1, Sub-Article 1 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Under Article 1, 2 of the Constitution, the state, the Constitution allows citizens the sovereign power to either directly or indirectly through to elect their democratic representatives. Now, this is the genesis of the conversation on elections, that the Constitution has said we have the right to elect our own representatives. So how do we do that? Then now we are having a conversation called, or a topic called elections. And for us to have, to conduct elections, Article 88, as may be read along with Article 248 and 249, there is an established IEBC Act of 2011, which then gave birth to IEBC with the constitutional mandate to conduct and supervise referendum and elections as stipulated by the Elections Act. Now, further, Article 38, Sub-Article 2 of the Constitution, which is very famous, almost everybody knows about that. Every citizen has, every Kenyan citizen has the right to free, fair, and regular elections based on universal suffrage and the free expression of the will of the electors. Now, when you look at the same article under 3B, every adult citizen without any unreasonable restriction has the right to vote by secret ballot in any election or referendum. Now, this is where it gets warm. The 2017 general election was held for the first time under an elaborate regime of electoral laws, including amendments to the Elections Act made to introduce the KIMS. I said the KIMS is a legislation, which was a new device intended to be used for voter identification, as well as the transmission of election results from polling stations simultaneously to the constituency tallying center and the national tallying center. We have the previous speakers have talked much about the technical part of how that's going, or rather how that can be practically done. But I still have issues on the legal side of it. IBZ is one of the institutions or agencies whose laws are merely advantaged and disadvantaged at the same time. One day, if we will have an opportunity, in the book that I will be publishing, there's a topic that I said, what you can but cannot. Now, IBC has so many of its regulations or laws that cannot be executable. For example, when you are talking about the simultaneous transmission, identification and transmission from the polling station via the constituency to the national tallying center. How is IBC able or in position to, practically do that? None or no one has really demonstrated that capacity. Now, I don't know whether technology in terms of election gets has been given sufficient time, sufficient capacity to be explored, to the standard, to the threshold that probably would raise that confidence that we're talking about. But the techies in the house will help us, will guide us on that. Now, Mr. Odinga, for the ODM, and alongside his running mate, Kalonzo for Wiper, under the NASA collusion, after being declared as losers, filed a petition challenging the declared presidential results, citing abortion of justice under several constitutional provisions. I will not dwell on the many provisions that were in question. I will try to focus on the ICT part of it. But prior to the hearing, and as a tradition, several applicants sought to be enjoined as interested parties and amicus curiae. A notable was the application by Kanjama. I think maybe in future, when we have such conversation, we should probably praise ourselves in detail with the Kanjama's application. He was the advocate for ICT Association. Unfortunately, the application was not granted, but luckily, the petitioner, that is Mr. Odinga, was allowed access to the IEBC electoral system under the direction of the registrar of the Supreme Court, 2 ICT experts, and I think there are 5 party agents for each party. Now, this was because the petitioner had raised pertinent, very serious issues that he alleged to have failed in the process of relaying and transmitting results. As we speak now, I still believe that the same issues have not been sufficiently addressed, and I think I stand to be on the other side alone, unlike the previous participants who were kind of positive on the work that IBC has done, and my reasons are aligned to what the 2017 findings were. One, there was the delay of transmission of results. If we can all remember, the delay took up to 9 days for some of the results to be transmitted to the National Tallying Center. Recently, when we were doing the dry run, I mean, the same issue popped up. It took, I mean, the longest time for the transmission of results, and in some cases, as Fred has said, it even failed. So that's one. Two, the failure to have primary and data recovery sites in the country. Remember then in 2017 we were talking of the hosts, Otimofo in France. They were asleep when we wanted them to probably testify, because I would have expected them that then, being the administrators, the owners of the system that had now been a subject of litigation, should have been part of the IBC defense team, trying to demonstrate, to satisfy the court that this system cannot be interfered with, this system is not compromisable and all that. But they said, we are asleep. And that was it. So they left us helpless. Now the court, IBC do not have an ICT expert. The court had to get the 2 experts that were contracted on a very short notice without their familiarity with the system to go and testify, or rather to help the courts and the litigants understand what is this that we are talking about, the server, what is it? Now, the third issue is technology was tested then in 2017, 2 days to election, as opposed to the legal requirement of 60 days before election. Now, the 2022, how different have they done for us to have some confidence in them? The difference is they have done it in less than 14 days to the election day, and they have not satisfied us that it's working. Still, they are still grappling. Point number 4, the disbursement of election technology advisory committee by the IBC then in a case of Maina Kai in the High Court, I think also rendered IBC helpless. Why? Because, for example, the decision-making organ of IBC, talk of the chairperson is a lawyer, the CEO then is an entrepreneur, the ICT team were, I mean, they are lawyers, not so familiar with the others, but now they have a system here. The system that they have not shared with our local techies, the KSFA, the KINAFRED, the KINAMALUSI to interrogate it, and now they are the ones to make a decision on whether it is good or not good, partially good, partially, you know. So that up to date, IBC does not have that kind of internal capacity. Then that's why most of the questions that you send to them, Mr. Fred, most of the questions that you send them on technical aspect, they can not answer, because it's like you and I having a conversation on technical aspects. I mean, I'll listen to you, and because I am the IBC chair, I'll give you a generic response. That's why you don't get those kind of responses, and also to avoid contradiction. Smartmatic cannot respond to you. They can only respond to you through IEBC. So you cannot have a direct conversation between, and that's why we even have their local partner. Even IBC cannot fully engage Smartmatic on those bases. Now, we talked of the IBC portal. I think, Fred, you agree that it was not, I mean, the results were not compromised, but this is information in the public domain, that the results that were shared in the IBC portal were they were varied from some of the polling stations and actually some of the constituency tallying centers. If you will remember, they were supposed to have Form 34As, 40,000 of them, thereabout, I mean an equivalent of the number of polling stations, but IBC was only able to produce 29,000. Where are the others? That is where the discrepancy in numbers and everything was, not our subject conversation. In regards to the petition, in that regard, the petitioner sought to be allowed, among other terms, an order of scrutiny and audit of the system and technology used by the IEBC in the presidential election, including but not limited to the KIMS kit, the server, I mean that portal, and I am not sure, as I speak today, from any angle, whether we have had sufficient research or conversation in respect to ICT for election technology. Even in the US, I followed closely the conversation around the Donald Trump, and the proceedings were similar to what happened in our 2017, and actually all the court proceedings that have happened when an issue on technology emerges. Now, I have always believed that the Supreme Court on the issues for determination technically avoided to address its mind on the issue on electoral technology system in order to comprehensively examine and analyze the allegations raised by Mr. Odinga on the failure of technology, and the same has been kept under the table mat from public discourse, despite there being strong suggestions that this was a deliberate semantic and systematic failure. IBC has remained adamant. In law, we say the omnia premature right. I mean, acts are presumed to have been done rightly and regularly as even it admits today. Now, as we are speaking, we have over, is it 10,000 or 1,100? I'm not so sure, of polling stations that do not have 3G and 4G network coverage across the country. But as we are speaking now, this is still being, even yesterday, I think it's over the weekend when I saw the CEO, they are still saying it is, they are still struggling to get the solution to that. And we know quite very well that if any of the 290 constituencies do not participate in the election, then that election is obviously null and void. For a presidential election, all the 290 constituencies must participate. And we are talking about over 1,000, I think, is it either 1,000 or 10,000 that do not have. So, and we already have a matter before court. We are waiting, I think tomorrow, that the court will decide on section 89, the interpretation, although it was clearly advised in the 2017 general petition that we need to have a backup or an alternative in case the system fails. That being the primary, we can have the backup. But now that somebody went to court, the court will still need to pronounce itself. Now, in the event that the court tomorrow pronounces and says, no, that we have to follow what the Elections Act requires of us to do, then, and rules out the option of manual, or rather having the forms 34B lifted maybe by whichever means to bombers, then there's a challenge, and a very serious challenge there, because I don't know how IBC would do if one of these polling stations we're talking about are somewhere in Moyale. Now, that is an area that we are trying to avoid. I don't know why, when we have people like, Fred, who can, be engaged as an independent consultant and, help our institution on this. Now, as I wound up, there was the Kriegler report after the 2007 general election that led the country into dark times. The report made significant recommendations on the use of technology in the electoral process. The commission precisely recommended without delay that then the ESK starts to develop an integrated and secure tallying and data transmission center or system, which would allow computerized data entry and tallying at constituencies, secure simultaneous transmission of individual polling station level data to the national tallying center. Now, how many years? I think over 15 years down the line, we are still grappling with the same conversation as to whether we should use manual or should not. Why is it so difficult for the country, or particularly not the country, for the IBC to get a solution 10 years down the line? Now, when you look at the election technology under section 44.3, clearly provide that the commission shall ensure that the technology is in use under subsection 1 is simple, accurate, verifiable, secure, accountable, and transparent. While I was following the conversation then, I laughed at myself when senior counsel, learned friend, Mr. Angatia, described electronic transmission as a mere matter to nothing more. I don't know what was his understanding, but in my own understanding, that is not something so significant in as far as elections are concerned. I understand that the lawyer is, in that case, the advocate was concerned on taking or winning the case, but he helped in setting the precedence that many years later, is now going to, like Orengo said, it is own status. No, you can proceed with the, I'm in a meeting, you can proceed, I'll review later. So sorry about that. Now, I was making a comment on how a senior precedent was set merely on an assumption. Now, when you are talking about a system that transmits elections, results that will be used to determine who the president of a country is, and we are looking at it as merely a matatu, then there's a very serious problem in terms of our understanding of what we are talking about. According to IEBC, KIMS, I'm referring to 2017, KIMS was programmed to capture and transmit only one image. But again, IBC agreed that in some circumstances, text data was transmitted instead of filled and scanned Form 34A. Mr. Fred has addressed himself to that issue, which I tend to disagree, because IBC itself admitted that you can, I mean, they were in some circumstances, text data was transmitted instead of what the providers, the Otimorpho had indicated that they would only, it was programmed to only share or rather transmit one image. So currently, I don't know what Smartmatic has done to address that issue of where there's no Form 34A, the presiding officer or the authorized personnel will enter text and transmit, because that is a serious technological concern that I have not had any conversation from any of the players. Now, to be sincere, failure to access 3G and or 4G network coverage is not a failure of technology. That is how the IBC interprets when you're blaming it for its failure in technological compliance. They are saying that it is not upon them. I mean, it's beyond them to have technology 3G, not to have 3G or 4G network. But is that the conversation that we should be having? I don't think so. Now, when I looked at the IBC report, or what was it called?
Alnori,
sure.
Allow me just to cut you short and just give you notification that you have around 2 minutes. Then we start wrapping this up. Thank you.
Thank you. Much obliged. I thought the flow was just mine, but if you don't, for us, if you don't give us a warning, we will always exhaustively express our views. But thank you. I stand guided. Now, I was actually coming to the end of my submission, and as I wind up within those 2 minutes, I wanted to submit that either IBC does not appreciate the importance of technology in election, or it does, but deliberately avoids it for reasons best known to them. Why? IBC has always conducted business in opaque environment, and that does not translate to secure business, but instead it attracts suspicion suspicious reactions. 2, technology cannot be argued, cannot be supported by affidavits, legal expression, generic oral and opinions like proposals. All the conversations I've had around the entire technology or cybersecurity issues around elections are more of opinions. I mean, there's nothing so tangible to invite anyone to say we are talking technology in terms of election management. Now, another thing, I think IBC has only changed from Otimorpho to Smartmatic BVN International, with everything remaining the same. And in mathematics, or rather, if you apply the same method, the same way, and expect different answer, then my teacher would say you are in this is a history student in a mathematics class. Now, IBC hasn't demonstrated their DRP and BCP plans And if anyone has one, I would be happy to probably interrogate it and understand it from the legal perspective. How compliant is it with the current consequential amendments that have happened since then, the Data Protection Act, the Political Parties Act, the Elections Act, and the others. Now, I think I should be able to round up at that point, hoping that now we can possibly now start looking at the finer aspects of IT as opposed to the global way we are trying to look at it as layman. When we have the technical team like Fred, Malusi, and the others, please guide us satisfactorily. And I do appreciate your contribution. Thank you very much. I was saying you submit the simultaneous, the streaming.
Thank you so much, Alnori, for that. And just as we wrap up, I hand over to Fred to answer a few questions, though I know they might have been partially answered. So one of the things I love with these webinars that we are having is that we are not forcing any, how can I say it? Any stand or any conclusion the association might be having, or myself or anyone from the association leadership might be having. Our aim is always to ensure that we are giving information. Then from this information, all of us here are able to change that conversation, to be part of that conversation, to help people not think twice, but to help people critically analyze their grid norm. Then based on that, enable us to make our own informed decision. So Fred, as we wrap this up, I would just like to give you, and hopefully I saw our association chair in the call, an opportunity to share a few remarks, some closing remarks, respond to a few questions, then I will wrap this up. Thank you.
Thank you for the moderation. Also, thank you, Alinori, for the wisdom from the legal perspective, and we really appreciate, and also, of course, everyone else who is following. And I can say one of the challenges that we face as a country, and in regards to IBC, they do not have a very good framework for implementation of the requirements of the law. What do I mean? They are required to have provision for result transmission, but what are they supposed to use? They don't have their own network. If you look at the military, for instance, they have their own network systems. They have their own channels. And it might be hard if you are not in the military for you even to decipher whatever they are speaking on, whatever they are communicating. And this has been facilitated by the virtue of having their own frameworks and systems and structures in place. In this case, IBC is relying on a third-party provider. And this third party is Safaricom. And one of the questions is on the issue of verification, authentication, and all that. So you may have two-factor authentication on the network. But now, by virtue of relying on another third-party provider, somehow they are at the mercy of that provider. The provider may say that they have applied network freeze, but anything happens. A denial of service can happen on a network, and it goes down, it becomes unavailable. So in that case, one of an additional authentication and authorization within the network they have applied is the aspect of encryption end-to-end. Another one is that they are hashing the image. So after the image has been taken through the KIMS kit, that process generates a hash. And a hash is just unique, let's say unique number, which is used to verify the integrity of that content. In this case, the image, the form 34A, that someone will not say that you generated you have created your own fake form 34A. So the hashing, and in this case, I think they're using MD5 algorithm. So before the image is transmitted on the network, so there's a hash. And when it hits the National Tallying Center, the servers, the hash is there. So we can be able to verify the authenticity of this image. So we can say that that is another additional layer of authentication. But going back at this as a challenge to the community, because we are building up a community where we will have knowledge, and this knowledge must be able to be converted into something that will be valuable for the nation. This is a challenge to us and all those who are doing research. Right now, I have seen Smartmatic. They are already contributing to a framework for general elections security. They are coming up with a model they are calling general model for voting security, something like that, in collaboration with. Sorry.
Sorry to cut you short. Just a polite reminder that we are now way beyond our 30 minutes. So have that in mind. Thank you.
I have 2 minutes to finalize on that. So they are coming up with such a model. And the reason is that they want to sort the issue of the security, or to contribute towards the knowledge, so that they can sort the issue of security around elections through research. So us as a nation, we can be able to, we can blame IBC, but they don't have their own network. They don't have their own, let's say, maybe the technical team or technical capacity that is required to ensure that these things work according to the law. For instance, the 1,100 polling stations without network, 3G and 4G, they have said, but they are non-committal, that they are going to use modems. Which modems are they going to use? In which network? So those are some of the challenges that somehow as IBC, they may face. And as a community, this is a challenge that we are throwing at ourselves. Can we encourage research around this and see how, because now when you come to the 2027, we should now be talking of making sure that the entire election system is digitized, where we will not have manual election system. But 10 years, 12 years, 15 years down the line, we are still having manual. We are discussing, should we use digital register? Should we use the manual register? We are somehow mark timing. And honestly, according to also how my brother has shared, if we are not careful, we may also go back to the status of where we were at 2017, where the process was the main that made the election to be nullified. Is there another question? Because I cannot see.
No, I think those are basically the main two questions on whether lack of 3G and all that for the 1,100 polling station was going to affect validity of the election.
Okay.
Yeah. Then with that, I would like to first of all apologize to everyone for extending, going way before our prescribed time. But as we mentioned that this was done in good faith, just to ensure that all of us are consuming and taking advantage of this knowledge. Then lastly, I would like to appreciate our panelists, Freda, Malusi, Alinori, and Jones for also creating their time and sticking around up to this late hour. And lastly, want to wish everyone a lovely evening, a lovely night, and see you in the next webinar. Thank you so much, and bye for now.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you very much and have a blessed night.